and then we will stand and sing it together in community. And so this carol is called "It Came Upon the Midnight Clear." Now, check out this first line. It came upon the midnight clear. Clear, clarity. Think of the moved upon, the power of God moved upon the face of the deep. Everything was formless and void. The midnight clear. Clarity. It came upon the midnight clear, the dark place with complete clarity. A glorious song of old. A song of old, the spiritual truth. The spiritual truth. From angels bending near the earth. And you might remember last week we talked about angels are messengers. They are God's messengers. From the messengers who are bending near, they're going to tell us something. Are you excited? I am. To touch their harps of gold. What is gold? It's very valuable, isn't it? They lean near the earth. They're touching the valuable, beautiful harps of gold. They have a valuable message that they're about to tell us. And the message is peace. What? Peace on the earth, goodwill to men and women, and gender non-binary, goodwill to all humanity, and not just humanity, but to all creation. From heaven's all gracious King. Anytime we're talking about the King, we're talking about consciousness, a kingdom of consciousness. From the heavenly consciousness, the big, wide consciousness of oneness and unity and inclusion. From heaven's all gracious King, the world in solemn stillness lay, receptive, still, receptive, open, ready to hear what the angels are going to sing to us about, to hear the angels sing. Let's look at verse 2. Still through the cloven skies. What's a cloven sky? They part, right? The skies part. The angels with peaceful wings, right? Unfurled, and their heavenly music floats. They're telling us the secret. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. The music floats all over the weary world. Have you ever felt weary? Do you just feel like sometimes, you know what, God, I could use a message of peace. I could use a message of goodwill. All over the weary world, above its sad and lowly plains. See, we're having our experience in the realm of form, aren't we? The lowly plains of form. But that's not actually all there is, right? There's also the heavenly. As above, so below. Above the sad and lowly plains, the angels are bending. They're hovering. The messengers are right where we are. They can't wait to care for us. And over the Babel sounds, right? Babel. Blah, 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 blah. You got your story. Life is hard. Da, da, da. It's too busy. Can't do it. Traffic. Babel, babble, babble. Over all of that, the blessed angels sing the spiritual truth of peace and love, or all of planet Earth. Last verse. For lo, the days are hastening on. The days are going by, right? I love old language like this. It warms my heart. By the prophet bards foretold. Now remember, the coming of the Christ, how we think of it as the coming of the Christ consciousness, was prophesied in the book of Isaiah. They said the Messiah, the anointed one, will come. And from that will come peace on earth, goodwill to men, as we embody that consciousness. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So it was foretold, and now the ever-circling years are going by, and now the age of gold, the age of the conscious awareness of the coming of the Christ consciousness in each one of us. And peace shall prevail over all the land of form to the degree that we are able to embody that Christ consciousness. Its ancient splendors flinging all over the place. The world gives back the song, right? As above, so below. When we start singing the godly song down here, we're responding to what's already so. We just have to engage with it at that level. Got it? The angels now sing. They're already singing it. Are we willing to sing it back? Are you willing to sing that message of love and peace and goodwill to all back to the heavens? And when we are, peace will make itself known. Here on the lowly plains where the Babel just seems like it might be in charge, it ain't. Ready to stand up and sing back to the angels? Here we go.
It came upon Still through the cloven skies they come with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above this sad and lonely plains they bend on hovering wings, and ever o'er his babble sound the blessed angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophets bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and no world give back the song which now the angels sing.
Beautiful. Give yourselves a hand. Good work. I am going to read through today's affirmation, and then you're going to get a lot of exercise this morning. Then I'm going to ask you to please stand and join me. It goes like this. Love always finds me as I rest in every moment, present to the full experience of life. I trust the universe. I trust love. And I wait with an open and loving heart for all good things. Please stand and join me with conviction. Love always finds me as I rest in every moment, present to the full experience of life. I trust the universe. I trust love. And I wait with an open and loving heart for all good things. And so it is. I'm just going to let you know that we told all of our guest artists this month to bring their favorite Christmas song. And it could be sacred or secular. It just had to mean Christmas to them. And we're only in week 2, and I'm so grateful that we did that, because the dividends are paying off. And all month long, we're talking about waiting. We're talking about waiting for that which is to come. We're talking about waiting ultimately for the birth of the Christ consciousness in each one of us that opens our heart finally to the understanding that one thing is happening, and we are in the midst of that one thing. And sometimes the wait is a bit of a slog. Yes? And so I was reflecting on the times of my life that I have spent waiting. And I had a very early lesson in waiting in my life that felt like a bit of a slog. And I'm going to share just a little piece of it with you, because I think it will help us understand the value of waiting in a certain way. And so when I was 9 years old, in December, we were going to the church potluck. I was Lutheran. We had potlucks for every holiday. And I remember that my stepdad was not feeling well. And my mom said to my brother and I, take the dishes and go wait in the car. And we went out, and I had a casserole on my lap. And praise God, because it was cold out there. And I remember I was warming my hands, and it was taking them a long time to come out to the car. And my brother and I are kind of pushing each other and warming up our hands and complaining about how long the adults were taking to get it together. And my older sister came out to the car finally, And we were like, oh, we're going to go now, because I loved the church potluck. I was pretty excited about the church potluck. And my sister came out, and she opened the door to the car, and she looked at us, and she said, no potluck tonight. Come in the house. And we were like, huh? Like, what? Like, how could that be? That isn't how we did things, right? And we went with our little potluck dishes back in the house, and my stepfather was on the sofa, and it was clear he was very ill. And we put the dishes down, and my sister kind of herded us down to the bedroom, and my other sister was there, and we all kind of piled on the bed, and we waited. And while we were waiting, we heard noises, things happening out there. And then pretty soon, I saw red flashing lights through the curtains. And I remember I peeked out, and this is old school, I was 9 years old, it was 1968. Like old school ambulance was in front of our house. Our house. And the neighbors were coming out and looking. And my siblings and I were just waiting on the bed for something to happen, in a state of not knowing. And you know how when you're a kid you make things up in your head? And honest to Pete, I don't know if I really remember this. Like, did this really happen, or did I make it up, But some part of me remembers looking out the window and watching my mother step up into the ambulance with my little sister, who was 6 months old, in her arms. And we still didn't know we're in the bedroom waiting. And the ambulance drives away, and the lights go away with it. And this deep, palpable fear was just, I don't even have the words for how full the room was of fear and anxiety and, dare I say it, even surrender. Because we had no clue what was going on, except that it was completely out of our control. And I can say that now, looking back as an adult. As a child, I would not have been able to articulate that. But I am very clear that is what was happening for us. And my siblings and I, we were always going like this with each other. No, we were curled up on that bed together, like all piled all over each other. And finally, the door opened, and it was one of the church ladies. And she came in, and she said, your daddy's ill. He's gone to the hospital. Your mother's with him with your little sister. Come on out. We got some food for you. And of course, our 2 potluck dishes, plus they brought some other stuff from the church potluck. Good Lutherans, right? And two or three of the church ladies were there, and they were setting the table and getting stuff set up. And we sat at the table, and we ate, and of course, we're full of questions, and nobody knows. Nobody can answer our questions, because nobody knows what's happening. And we have our little potluck dinner. They get us in our jammies, and they tuck us into bed, and they stay. And what I didn't realize then is, as tense and suspenseful as that waiting was at the time, it had only begun. Because the next day you wake up, it was Monday morning, it's time to go to school. Where's my mama? Like, oh, she's at the hospital with the baby. Like, everything is suddenly different, and we still don't know what's going on. Yes? And one of the church ladies is still there. Did you love that term, church lady? I love that. We don't have church ladies in the same way we used to anymore. And I would not use that term to talk about any of you today. But when I was a kid, they were church ladies, right? One of the church ladies was still at our house, and she got us breakfast, and she got us off to school, and we went to school, and I don't know what's going on, I'm waiting. And we get home, well, your daddy's had a stroke. He's had a cerebral hemorrhage, actually. And did that help? I have no idea what that is. I'm 9 years old. When's he coming home? And I'm thinking they're going to say Tuesday, right? We don't know. And now we're waiting. And you know, in those days, they didn't send you to a rehab facility, did they? He was in the hospital for 3 months. We waited 3 months. The church ladies took care of us. Every day, somebody from the church was there when we got home from school. Every day, they helped us with our homework. They fixed our dinner. They got us in our jammies. They tucked us into bed. Every morning, somebody from the church was there. Fed us breakfast, got us dressed, got us off to school. Isn't that lovely? 3 months. I barely saw my mom or my little sister during that time. My little sister was 6 months old. She was still nursing. So my mom had to have her with her. And she was mostly at the hospital, right? That's what she did. And as time went on, she was home a little bit more, but the church ladies were still there. But we were waiting, do you see? And we were waiting for Daddy to come home and everything's going to be okay. And finally, Daddy's coming home. I was so excited. And we're all lined up on the sofa was in front of the window, and we're like on the back of the sofa, looking over the back of the sofa. And the car pulls in the driveway. And my mom comes around and she opens the door and she gets a wheelchair out. What? Who needs a wheelchair? And she wheels the chair up to the passenger door, and she's helping my stepdad out of the car and into the wheelchair. He was unrecognizable. He'd been in the hospital for 3 months. I was like, who is this strange person? I don't know who that is. I'm 10 by now. I'm supposed to be all grown up. But I don't know who this person is, and she brings him in the house, and he doesn't know who I am. And now we're waiting. We're waiting for him to be well. And time goes on, and the church ladies continue to help, and family continued to help, and all kinds of things happened in our lives during this time of waiting. But think about this for a moment. On the bed, looking out the window, the neighbors are coming out. The church ladies are coming. In the midst of all of this waiting, we found one another. Our community found us. And we found our community. How many of you know who Ralph is? Right? He's around here. Is he in here right now? I don't know where he is. We found Ralph because he was studying to be a physical therapist. And my mom didn't have money for physical therapy. And so a friend of ours brought him to the house. And 50 years later, we can't get rid of him. Amen to that. We found each other in our waiting. And we found ways to be better people in our waitings. And we found ways to learn and grow in our waiting. I'm going to briefly share with you another waiting story from our book of the month, The 7 Spiritual Gifts of Waiting. She's on a flight that experiences severe weather. The pilot announced, "We're circling Milwaukee. Can't land." Half an hour later, the pilot declared, "It's still too dangerous. We're running low on fuel. We got to go to another airport." By that time, it was clear that our plans were out of control. Connecting flights became impossible. It was uncertain whether we would even be able to get to our destination that same day. At that point, we all gave up. When we accepted that everything was in pandemonium, life got easier. As we sat on the tarmac in Michigan, people spoke kindly to one another and passed their cell phones back and forth so everyone could call home. People began telling stories of where they were headed, of their families, of their jobs. We became more than silent strangers. We surrendered to forces beyond our control, and we found each other. Anybody ever waited through a situation or a circumstance that was beyond your control? You just had to be in it. What did you find there? We found a lifelong friend. We found spiritual community. I have so many warm, loving memories of the church ladies. And it gave me a vision for spiritual community that I'm not sure I would have without that experience. It informed much of my practice as a community builder and as a minister, and now your lives get touched by that. What can we find in the waiting, in the holding pattern, if you will, when you just don't know what the heck is happening and what the future might bring? This loss of control, this experience of having to wait, having to curl up with your brother that you were just like fighting with in the car 10 minutes before, and now you're curled up with him on the bed because you've lost control and there's nothing else to be done but to turn to whoever is there and allow yourself to be supported and loved, to humbly surrender to what is and be in the presence of that, because the only thing left is trust that there is something greater than we are. The only thing left is an understanding that there is something greater, that as intolerable as waiting one more moment for my stepdad to be healed, or waiting one more moment for that plane to land, it seems intolerable. And yet we tolerate it, don't we? We do. We are called to surrender and trust. You know what? This plane's going to get there when it gets there. In the meantime, maybe I'll actually talk to the person that I've practically been sitting in their lap for 6 hours. See, we begin to rearrange our priorities and live in trust that the universe is for us. We find each other. And by finding each other, we begin to find our inner self. We begin to find a greater truth. We begin to find out by yielding and surrendering who we truly are. If we are willing, truly, to be in humility and surrender to the waiting. This time of year, every year, we practice remembering the birth of the Son of the infinite. We practice remembering the birth of something greater than we are. The season is called Advent. Advent means to turn toward. We turn toward and wait for, but with a consciousness of anticipation, with a consciousness that something greater than we are is all over it. And all we got to do is show up willing and available to that consciousness. Today's author, Holly Whitcomb, she says we can give in to the quagmire or we can give the quagmire to God. Now, I don't know about you, there's been times in my life, in spite of this early lesson in waiting, there have been times in my life when I gave in to the quagmire. And I allowed the quagmire to tell me how to feel and what to think and how to behave. And I can promise you those were my times of my very worst behavior. Anybody else? Like the kind of behavior that I hate to admit to. But what if I gave the quagmire to God and humbly surrendered and trusted that beyond my kind of false sense of self-reliance is something greater? And in order for me to really begin to live into that, I turn to you and to you and to you. I find something larger and more inclusive. And in the midst, the irony of it is as I turn without, remember, as without, so within. As I turn without, and I ask the church lady in you for support and friendship to elevate my consciousness. What? Did you hear that part? To elevate my consciousness? See, I'm also turning within and recognizing that that greater something is right here. And that as I'm willing to be humble and ask for support and surrender and be present to the gifts of despair. She talks about the gifts of despair. The gifts of despair, making peace with what is. Getting willing to change our perceptions and priorities. Oh, well, I guess that connecting flight wasn't the most important thing in the world anyway, after all, right? Because if it had been the most important thing in the world, your whole life would be ruined because you missed it. But now, suddenly you've been able to go on. Your life wasn't ruined. Yes, perhaps your plans changed. But here you are, present, awake, available, and allowing yourself to go deeper in faith than you ever have before, that something greater than you is right where you are, experiencing itself as you, and as I am present to the experience and what it has to teach me, wonderful things can happen. From our book of the month, page 34. When something unbearable happens, we are tempted to move on quickly, to get over it, to avoid dwelling on it. The pain is excruciating, yes? And all we want is for the pain to pass. We think if we can be strong enough, if we can buck up, it will go away. The opposite, in fact, is true. To move on too quickly prevents us from learning the lessons of surrender. Can you lay on the bed, completely surrendered to exactly what is happening without knowing what it is, learning the lessons of surrender and yielding? We need to stop, sit, and just be. She has a really great poem in here I think I'll share with you too. It's called What to Do in the Darkness. Do you ever wonder what to do in the darkness? So in the midst of that being, there is also a doing, right? But we're doing from a certain state of consciousness, a certain place of being. What to do in the darkness? Go slowly. Right? Can't see anything. I don't know. Don't go too fast. Go slowly. Consent to it. But don't wallow in it. Know it as a place of germination and growth. Remember the light. Take an outstretched hand if you find one. Exercise unused senses. Find the path by walking it. Practice trust. Watch for the dawn. Watch for the dawn. When we are in the darkness, sometimes we just got to cry, Uncle. I give. Have your way with me. There is something here for me. And in the meantime, I'm going to be present to it. I'm going to be present to it. I'm going to see what it has to teach me. I'm going to surrender to it. I'm going to yield. I'm going to be humble in the face of it. And as we yield and as we surrender, there are lessons and awakenings and spiritual truths making themselves known to us. And suddenly, aha, something happens in our conscious awareness. And we surrender more fully to the God consciousness. That birth that we are turning toward right now is the birth of that consciousness. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. Now, this time of year, it's always interesting for me to turn to a couple of champion waiters, and I'm thinking right now of Mary and Joseph. And we're going to actually talk about Mary in depth in a couple weeks. But think about her. She had a pretty long wait there, didn't she? From the time the angel came down and said, going to be a baby, going to be the messenger of God, right? You will give birth to something. You will give birth to a child. And she's all like, what? And she pushes back a little bit, but then she says, all right, you know what? I am yielding. I am surrendered. In the depths of this waiting, I am a surrendered instrument for the divine. And then she waits. How long does it take to have a baby? This could be a pretty long slog if you're a single woman in the Middle East 2,000 years ago, pregnant. But she waits with grace, with humility, with surrender. And you know who else was waiting with grace, humility, and surrender is Joseph. Because when Joseph finds out, he had two choices, didn't he? He would have been well within her rights to like kind of not believe the divine story and think she'd been like doing her business with somebody else. And he would have been perfectly justified in the culture of the time in walking away from her, but he waited. He waited for the birth of the Christ consciousness. She waited for the birth of the Christ consciousness with patience, with humility, with a sense of yielding. They turned toward the birth of something greater than they are, and they found each other. They found one another. And they found all of those characters. I love looking at the nativity scene every year. I always think it's so funny. I saw a Facebook thing the other day that it was it was an outdoor nativity scene, and somebody was walking by, and there was a German shepherd sleeping in the little baby Jesus bed. And they had captioned it something like, the shepherds came a little early. This is one shepherd who just couldn't wait to get in there. But everyone around them was in service to the greater idea. They found one another, they supported one another, and by finding one another, they found themselves. How willing are you to reach out for a hand if you can find one? How many of you are willing to be humble enough? I don't know about you, but I can do it. In fact, yesterday was fudge day at my house. There were like between 20 and 30 people at my house all day long. They kind of came and went. And we made candy, Christmas candy all day. And this is an annual tradition in my family. And I was working really hard because there's a lot you have to do to make fudge day. We made 9 batches of fudge and 2 batches of peanut brittle and 3 batches of, I know, you want to come to my house? Anyway, so you got to be washing dishes, you got to be doing stuff all day, right? And at one point I was stirring the peanut brittle and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I got to go do that, I got to do that. And it suddenly occurred to me, there's 25 other people in this house. Maybe somebody else could do that for you. And I literally in my mind thought, it'll be too hard. They won't know where the thing is. It's like, because I come up with all the reasons that they can't do that. It's like, get off yourself. Be humble, because I had already started preparing this message. Be humble. Be available. Reach out. Say yes. Open your mind to the consciousness of something greater than you are, making itself known as divine order in this situation. You don't have to do everything. Damn. And I learned something. I learned something about just being there, stirring the peanut brittle, and waiting, and allowing, and surrendering. And maybe that thing isn't going to get done. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't going to get done right. Maybe it's going to get done better than I ever could have done it. Who knows? But somebody else is on it. And I can stir peanut brittle, because that is what I am being about right now. And I begin to experience peace on earth. I begin to experience peace in mind and heart and body and soul. I begin to recognize that surrender and loss of control have something to teach me. That there is an opportunity to go deep with the infinite, even in what might seem like infinite waiting. You see, what happens is God finds me. I find God in my willingness to be in the moment, to be in the waiting for whatever it is I think is coming. And so let's turn within and seal that message, seal that awareness. I invite you to bring your attention to your breath. And to consider the opportunity to open your heart and mind to something greater than you are. Consider the opportunity to say yes to that infinite power, that infinite grace to have its way in your life. And wherever you may be waiting, whatever you may be waiting for, this too has its gifts. And begin to imagine, use the power of your mind to imagine the gifts that your waiting is already bringing to you. Who is supporting you? What is grief or loss or despair teaching you? What is waiting for this or that to happen or to become? What message does this waiting have for you? And with each breath, you open your mind and heart more fully. You surrender more completely. You become a hollowed out vessel for the very mind and heart of God to flow. And in the flow, you begin to feel your mind expand, your heart open to the consciousness of the infinite. The consciousness of peace, the consciousness of love, the consciousness above, below, within, without, all is well. And my beingness is my opportunity to learn and grow and deepen in God. And so give thanks for your expanding awareness. Give thanks for the opportunity to share this awareness in spiritual community this morning. Give thanks for the waiting and its gifts. And so I close this message with a grateful heart, knowing that we have been transformed by the renewing of our minds, that we have said yes, we have turned toward the consciousness of something greater than we are, and here it is, available to us by the power of our yes, by the power of our willingness. I simply call it good, and so it is. Amen.